Hey everybody, this is Peter Bowerman, the well-fed writer, and I am a commercial freelancer, which means writing for companies freelance. I've been doing this for about 16 years and wrote a couple books about it in the Well-Fed Writer series, which I self-published, which is a whole nother discussion. So interested in looking forward to sharing some good information about my story and how I got started and how it's something that you can do yourself. Well, I suppose if you're boring and dull, then being yourself wouldn't really be too beneficial for anyone. But I suppose in my case, at the risk of tooting my horn, I've got a fun personality, and I made a point of making sure that personality did come out in my books. And as a result of that, the readability of my books is one of the, I think, the real strong suits of my writing. And it's something that a lot of my readers have cited over the years as one reason why the books are so good and memorable and all that. And so there's a lesson in that if you write that way anyway, and you are just an engaging person and you have a lot of fun, then by all means make sure that comes out in your writing. There's a tendency sometimes for people to write just very stilted. They might be very articulate verbally, but then when they write, some strange presence takes over them and they become very wooden. People can get a sense of who you are, and I've heard that a lot. People say, I feel like I'm sitting across from you having a cup of coffee. And that's a nice thing to hear, because they feel very connected. And it's so funny. I have gotten not all the time, but a pretty healthy number of people over the years who have picked up the phone and called me with a question. I mean, I got a lot of email questions, and I'm always sort of a little surprised, kind of delightfully surprised, but when I get these calls and I think, wow, when was the last time I picked up the phone and called an author? And sometimes when I've asked this question to people, not trying to put them on the spot, they'll say, well, I just felt like I knew you, through the books. And that's kind of that's a really cool thing to be able to create. And if you're not sure you can create that, then maybe you find a ghostwriter to help you with your tone. And it's not like you do it just to make money. It just makes the process more fun when you can connect with your readership on that level. So absolutely, let your personality come out, and the quirkier and the more fun and interesting, the better. So people read my books, and it's not just, they don't just learn about commercial freelancing or self-publishing. They get an insight into my personality and my personal beliefs about things, and so that probably is why they feel like they're having a broader perspective of who I am. Well, the first thing, and I don't know if this is a stumbling block, but in a sense it is, the first thing to understand, my book, The Well-Fed Writer, the subtitle is Financial Self-Sufficiency as a Commercial Freelancer in 6 months or Less. It took me about 4.5 months to get established as a writer, which is pretty fast, especially for someone who started out, and I do make sure people know that I started out with no writing background, no writing training. I had never written anything for money. I had no paid professional writing experience at all. And I was paying all my bills in less than 4 months. That's not, it's kind of like I want to add something like the financial people say, your results may vary, because And this is the thing, going back to your question, one of the things they need to realize is that this isn't a cakewalk. It's a lot of hard work. And if somebody is thinking, wow, I'm going to, I read this book and I'm going to make 10 calls and $5,000 jobs are going to start falling into my lap. If you're taking that mindset away, then that could be an obstacle, because as soon as you run into the reality that it's a little more difficult than that, you might just quit. And so I think it's important for people to understand that any business that can ultimately make you low end 50, 60 an hour on up to 70, 80, 90, 100, 125 or more, and or more is true. It's not just hype. I mean, you work fast and you know your subject and you're working on a flat rate, you can often end up with true hourly rates of $200, $250 or more. But any field that can pay that kind of money is not going to be easy. And if it were that easy, then everybody would be doing it, and pretty soon we'd all be making $8 an hour, not 100. So, it's the old, like your mother told you, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So I think that that's probably, a big thing is to understand the reality of it. That said, this arena of freelance writing, freelance commercial writing, which is writing for companies freelance, is one of the most accessible and lucrative arenas of freelancing. It's a whole different world between this and, say, magazine writing or newspaper writing, which incidentally is going through a terrible bloodbath these days, and the financial side of it is only getting grimmer for freelancers. And it's not like our field has been completely unimpacted by the economy, but the bottom line is there's so much work out there, and there's more money in it because corporations have more money than publications do. So, one, it's not a cakewalk. Remember that. Another thing that sometimes stymies people is they get intimidated. They get intimidated by, say, oh, I could never work for IBM, or I could never work for Bell South or UPS or Coca-Cola or Georgia Pacific, or I'm not smart enough, whatever. And never put these people on a pedestal. I mean, sure, you can respect them, but you'd be amazed at how often they don't know what they're doing. And not because they're idiots. Sometimes they're idiots, but often because they're people who are thrown into a job that they're sort of out of their element, over their head, trying to get the feet under them, and this happens all the time. And and once you get a taste of that, you realize that you indeed, if you're smart and you can think strategically about a company, and you can get up to speed quickly about who they are, and it's not that hard. And I talk about all the ways that you can do that, relatively quickly in my books. You can make a difference for these people. So, so don't put them on a pedestal. And part and parcel of that, and I guess number 3, it's kind of an obstacle, is thinking that you don't have the personality to be successful. Meaning, you think that it takes a salesy, marketing savvy personality, and that if you're a creative type, let's say, that you don't have that. Sure, it's an adjustment to be thinking that way, but it's not that difficult an adjustment. And whether you're talking about commercial freelancing or even self-publishing, which is another arena that people feel like, oh, well, to self-publish my own book successfully, I would have to, be a real marketing whiz. And in both of those cases, I firmly maintain that it's far more about a process than it is about an aptitude or a personality. It's far more about a lot of things that you have to do than it is about some way that you have to be. And I really firmly believe this. And yes, people can say, oh, it's easy for you to say because, you came out of a sales background and all that. Well, yeah, I did, but I also didn't come out of a writing background. So I could have used that as an excuse to not enter a pretty high-stakes writing field. So I would say those are the three things. Remembering that it's not a cakewalk, not to be intimidated by the big players in the industry, and to realize that it's much more about a process than a personality.